Assalamu alaikum, friends and family of Cube EduTour. This is live chat session number 25, and this is the book that I was flipping through the pages of earlier today. If you want more details on it, DM me, I'll let you know. But one of the great philosophers the world has known, one of the last four greats, as we've been told. Also, while we start, I'd like to give acknowledgement of land, which means that I would like to acknowledge Mother River Sindhu, the River Indus, who has given us millennia of fertile plains of cultural diversity, as she continues to do so even now. So that would be my homage and tribute to the bioregion, the land that I belong to, that we live in, and that has inspired me to do all the work that I do. This acknowledgement of land is something I've learned recently, and I have to thank a dear friend of mine, Maliyamungu, who is an expert in heritage architecture, now lives in Sydney. So we discussed this earlier today, what would be the right words, and I thought that having our guest for today being who it is, it would be a great way to start the session. So welcome to everyone, familiar faces, some new faces. If you don't know Faiz Saab's work, highly recommend this reading. It's a great book. There's also, if you need translations, there's one by Dr. Imdad Hussain that I would recommend. Here is our guest. I'm going to say hello. Hi, Maliya. Let me bring her on board. This is lovely.
Hello, hi.
How are you?
I'm good and you. Let me.
Fantastic. Let me just readjust so you're not just looking at the text on my chest. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you Maliyamungu Gift Muhande. She has kindly agreed to give us her precious time in the middle of the day, in the middle of a week in New York. Maliya she's an artist, she's a film director, documentary film maker, and also a graduate student at the Parsons School of Design, working on the Environment and Community Design Seminar with Jean. So, Maliya, if you don't mind me calling you that, we can start. So
there's meaning to that, so it's okay.
There's meaning to that. I sent you yesterday in a message after our chat about what the name Maliha means in Urdu. I'm not sure if you received that or not. So
No, tell me.
When we reduce your name, your full name to Maliya, you say Maliya to me. Maliya is a very familiar name to us. It's the word Maliha, only has an H in it. So instead of Maliya, M-A-L-I-Y-A, it's essentially M-A-L-I-I-H-A. So Maliha. And Maliha means, appropriately enough, I suppose, it means beautiful woman in Urdu. So I thought I had to share this with you. I guess I sent this in a WhatsApp message because I looked up your name and I thought, what does Maliha mean? Let's see if there's a connection. So in Congolese, what does it mean?
So Maliyamungu is in Swahili.
Swahili.
And yes, and that's where my father is from. He's from Bukavu, and the native language there, one of them is Swahili. And he's specifically from he's Mushi. So Maliyamungu means riches of God.
Wow.
So Mali is riches, Ya is of, and Mungu is God.
Mali Mungu. Riches of God.
Yes.
Can't compete with that. That takes the trophy without any doubt.
But it's beautiful because
it
also in Malawi, what I've loved with reclaiming that name, because when I moved to South Africa, I remember the first day my teacher reading my name in class as he was introducing me to the class, because what happened was, so at the age of 12 I moved to South Africa, and when I arrived to a new school I was still learning how to speak English, and I remember my classroom teacher taking me from the reception to bring me into my homeroom class and introducing me by trying to say Maliyamungu Gift Muhande, and then just asking, can we call you Gift? Because he couldn't pronounce the first part. So I think it's been 3 years now that I've kind of asked people to say Maliyamungu or Malia for short, but reclaiming that name in the process of, talking about it, because it starts a conversation every single time. And with like I've made several people from Malawi where even just the Malia holds meaning. And gift also holds meaning. My parents giving me the name Gift, but it's been interesting to hear Malia resonate with more people, and for it to be in my native language, to resonate with other African countries, resonate with you, finding meaning in Urdu. It's powerful. So I love that. And I love even the beautiful woman. That's just, thank you. And to know that I'm walking around the world with a name that is resonating with a larger community is empowering to me.
Of course it is. And I mean, we're here today to talk about our shared histories,
Mm-hmm.
and our shared colonial history. And since we spoke, I've been mulling over this overnight on
Mm-hmm.
what kind of impact oppressive colonial history has had on us, keeping in mind that colonial history has also given us architecture, railroad systems, judiciary, libraries. They have given us, and when I say us, I mean you, me, the Vietnamese, the Thai, the Sri Lankans, the Australians, wherever there's been a colonial history. And we need to look at the list on the Commonwealth countries to really know where the Brits have been. And then, of course, there's the French and the Spaniards and the Portuguese. But along with what they did to take from us for their own benefit. So when I say us, again, I speak for all of these people, not just myself and you at the moment. That there's a united us that I want to include, so it is inclusive.
Yes.
And without meaning to be offensive in any way, it is a broad brush across all of the colonial history and all the colonial countries that are responsible for being colonists. They also, other than what they took for their own benefit, they also gave us. So they gave us new languages. I speak English because of my British history. You speak English and you speak French. So if we lived in complete lockdown, like we are now, quarantine or isolation, without the internet, completely in these little boxes, as indigenous people that didn't move, that didn't have any interaction with any of the others, then the only thing we would be left with, which is good, I think it's I shouldn't say only thing, because trade allowed many things to go back and forth. Design ideas were traded, poetry was traded, linguistics were impacted and traded, because when you're trading and you come into a caravanserai or into a trading post, there is a need for a common language. And sometimes you've been told that such and such space has the best silks, or the best spices, or the best bread, or the best wheat. So en route, people pick it up, or people hear outside that, oh, the stone there is fantastic, best quality stone, best quality marble, best quality craftsmen. Even the people were traded. And so how does one communicate in a group of people whose language you don't speak? So you try and find a common ground. Urdu is an interesting language in that sense. It's a modern language. It's not an indigenous language. It's not an ancient language like Sanskrit or Farsi. Interesting enough, a lot of the poetry written by Faiz, who's one of our national poets, and also, like I said, one of the world's last four great philosophers, most of this is in Farsi. Lucky for me, a lot of it I can read because of my early childhood education, thanks to my grandmother, not school. So in this region, Farsi is a common language. Farsi is a language that they ruled with and by when the Mughals were here. They were coming in from Samarkand and they spoke Farsi, which is Persian. when we are told that when the different tribes, so there was no India. Yesterday I was reading an article saying the Emperor Akbar was Indian. Well, actually, when he was around, there was no India. India is a modern concoction of politics today. Back in those days, they were all separate states.
Mm-hmm.
And when they would war amongst each other for land, for property, for money, for wealth, whatever, they were sort of feudal, princely states that would bicker amongst each other. And when their troops would get together in the evening over the campfire and chat, this is where the word Urdu came from. It comes from a word urdak, which means lashkar, and lashkar means troops who would sit around the fireplace. So it's a mixture. In Urdu, you will find Arabic, you will find Hindi, you will find Sanskrit, you will find Persian, you will find what other regional language? If I haven't mentioned already, Arabic. So it's a mixture, a melange of multiple languages, which for anybody ruling this region, it's perfect because most people are likely to, from the north to the south of the subcontinent, Indian subcontinent, east to west, most people are likely to know Urdu, and they do so even now. So language plays a huge role in what they gave us. You can now speak French. You speak Swahili, you speak English, you may speak a couple of other languages even. So I was thinking today that, I really wanted to ask you, watching what's happening in New York, you've just spoken to 4,000 people in public. That in and of itself requires a trophy because it's not something easy to do. Given the energy in the city, given the energy of the conversation and the upheaval, the reclamation that these people are wanting to do. And keep in mind, Malia, it's a 401-year-old issue. It's pretty young. If we look at the history of colonization and the oppression that comes with it, it goes much further back. Much, much further back, which history is just taken away from us by design. So I was just thinking that should we be talking about how to manage our colonists? Should there be an expectation? What do with our colonial history? Like, how do we manage it? Where does one begin?
Where does one begin? But I just want to resonate with everything you've just said, but start off with what they gave us and what they took from us.
Sure.
And also that me being right now in New York, land of Lenape, the weight of the history of America, of, you said these people, right? And I just want to say it's us.
It's us.
Yeah. The history of African Americans, of Native Americans is us. The history of Africa, when I look at an African American woman or man, I see me. I see someone that could be my cousin. I see someone that could be an uncle. I see someone that could be in my lineage. Because colonialism is enslavement of us in our own continent. By giving us what they gave us, they erased some of it too. And just as much as an African American has to reclaim their history, has to find out where they're from, that's the work that I'm doing as someone who was born in the Congo and raised there for right now, half of my life before I had to leave, to even be aware that I needed to reclaim my identity. Because when you're in it, you are hazed by certain things. Because that's how the system is.
Correct.
The racist system, the white supremacist system, the ideas that they are superior, they've just kind of like painted over it so that when you're in it, you're okay with the bare minimum of your identity, of your history, and of your heritage. So when I spoke in my neighborhood, it's impossible for me to say I'm not speaking on behalf of my people, because we're one. You know, yesterday I was having a conversation with my friend Brittany, who was saying they stole people. You know, and yesterday you were talking with Jean about mapping life and death. Are we recognizing the life in us? Are we recognizing that we're people? Are we recognizing that we are architectures of living chromosomes and living like veins? We have a pulse,
Yes.
you know. 400 years of fighting the same things. And I love that you said it's a young thing, right? So now when I look into Congo, we had independence in 1960. If 400 is young, am I really gonna wait 400 to see freedom? No ways. No. I'm gonna resonate with the pain of my people who've been fighting for 400 years. And then I'm gonna put that pain in me and make sure that I don't have to wait 400 years to say that we get freedom, we get equality, we undo the damage. And the colonizer need to see the damage. Can you believe that King Leopold's statue was still in Belgium until recently?
Yes.
I'm not saying let's destroy. I'm saying, can we recognize the damage we've done? You've done? Can you see that you were cutting our hands as punishment? Cutting our hands. Can we talk about it in our history classes? Why are we not being educated about that? I didn't learn about it. I had to look for it. That says a lot about the education system. It says a lot about the fact that you're still controlling the minds of the future, which means you haven't realized what you're doing. And if you have, you're aware of what you're doing and you're okay with it. And yesterday, when Jean was speaking, on Monday, when Jean was speaking about her grandson, and it makes me emotional, her grandson crying because he sees a bird fall out of a nest
And die.
and die. Children are the purest form. How can we not see that life in each other? What have we, who are we? And what I love about nature is if we're not going to cry for each other, nature is going to cry for us. And that's something I'm realizing. Nature is going to scream the pain of the people. African people are rooted in nature, rooted in community, one with nature. And I hope we are learning right now. I hope this is a shift. I hope this is the end of it. Because if we don't get it, nature is going to scream louder. And that's where I find a bit of hope to know that one with nature is not going to let this go. And our time, 400 years to nature, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's an hour. An hour too long. So how do we manage that? And also, like, we're privileged. We are privileged, we're resilient. Because even though we were colonized, we've used what they've given us to fight. We've used what they've given us to understand the full meaning of humanity. Loving beyond race, loving beyond beyond differences. There's so much privilege in that. There's privilege in fully loving. And if they're not excited to see that yet or to even experience it, that's their loss. But I hope they just give us equality. If you don't want to enjoy it, we're going to fight until we get equality. And we're going to fight with nature behind us. We're going to fight in unity. So, I'm still shocked that some people, weren't aware that racism was a thing until now. All of these things. So I am seeing something different that I hadn't before. White people taking this, embodying the pain and outrage and bringing it into their own community. That in my lifetime, and I don't know you, is something I haven't seen in my lifetime. And I'm praying that that's the difference. That's the difference. The people who created the problem realizing the damage, challenging themselves in their own community and taking initiative to fight for a better future. Not because it's for our skin color, but because it's for us as humans. And just like you mentioned, that, you know, lighter skin tones adapted with weather. Can people understand that? We're one.
We are one. We are one.
So
Interesting things. I know this is a chat, but really, I just want to sit and listen, and I don't want to interrupt. But you've made me think of two things. So the educational system is a real problem and has always been. You know, Gandhi, I'm sure you know this, when this region was trying to get the British out, Gandhi had studied law in the UK, and he'd come back, and he used his knowledge of British law against them and their system to get them out, which I think was fantastic, right? So what you just said, that, you know, we learn the language and then we use it to our benefit. Because that itself is a protest. That itself is a way of reclaiming that, okay, you're not going to understand it in my language. I'm going to make you understand my needs in your language, if that's what it is, the bottom line that it boils down to. And in the 400 years example, I just find it astounding that we have had people like Malcolm X and MLK, Martin Luther King. Both of them didn't live to see the age of 40, which is fascinating. We've also had Harvey Milk in terms of oppression of white supremacists on a minority that they can keep below. We have films, American History X. We have Schindler's List. We have films made that
Rosewood.
are, yes, that, and many more, and many more, that have hit the charts. So they're not films that you and I have got to see in an art cinema. They're not films that never made it to the Oscars. They are films that have been seen by the world. And yet, the educational system has continued its arrogance and continued its own systemic intellectual genocide globally. And I think that the reason why you're 400 years sitting where you're at now is coming to a boil at this point, and it's coming to a state of violence because it's been simmering, and one is coming back and knocking on the same doors. We want equality. I would like to call it humanity, because what they do is beyond just not being equal. It's inhumane. And that inhumanity, again, if you watch a film like, I'll think of the name in a minute, but when the Victorian Europeans, especially the British, but others also, created the zoo. They had animals in their zoo that they would find and bring back, but they also had indigenous folks, the Aborigines, the folks from New Guinea, Africans. They had people in cages that they would put on display and show, right? It's a great film that I'm going to think of the name, and if not, I'll share it later on.
Thank you.
And just sort of think that if this material has been documented, if it's, you know, the story that you just said about the hands being cut off, Belgium sells chocolate. There was an article on it yesterday, which in the shape of dark brown hands, and you just think, my God, this is way beyond even creepy and fetishistic, because it's just inhuman So one human treats the other human like they're not a sentient being. That is unnatural. You mentioned nature. So the equality is, I think it's a subset. The first fundamental thing is that can we, like you said, we are architecture of life, of blood, of water. We have a heartbeat, we have a pulse, we feel. Yesterday, I was writing a document for one of our Ministry of Wildlife about the elephant in Islamabad, that they're trying to think about whether the elephant should go to sanctuary or not. And I had to explain to this man that that elephant has a heartbeat. He feels pain, just like you. He feels loneliness and depression, just like you. He gets angry, just like you. You hold him responsible for getting angry about being maltreated? How is that even logical? I mean, you piss me off and I'm not allowed to react or respond or show my... What is that about? Like, how is it that you can do what you want and I'm supposed to just sit back, spread my legs and take it?
Which our
astounding.
ancestors didn't do, but they don't tell that story. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, they don't tell that story. So why are these stories being held? So, you know, Jean and I have been also talking about governance. So as we move forward and try and figure out, we're archaeologically digging up stories that have been held from us, stories that have been held from you, all your people, stories have been held from me, my people in the region. Why have these stories been held from us? And like I said in Jean's talk, that, you know, we were bombarded by all this Shakespeare. And I went through it again. It just seems so nonsensical today. Now that I'm finding what is regionally relevant and culturally relevant and what belongs to me, I'm suddenly thinking that all those hours I spent learning about how Julius Caesar was assassinated, please tell me, et tu Brutus, how does that help anything in my life? If it's a story about two friends, one backstabbing the other, that's what it is. Is it really possible, Malia, that in your culture, in your folklore, there isn't a story that can depict the same thing? That you have to be sent all the way to Greece and all the way to whatever theater in England to listen to what Shakespeare said? I don't have a story of two friends, one stabbing the other in his back in my region, my culture, my language, my music. I find that really hard to believe that this is the only iconic, that Romeo and Juliet is the only love story that we can learn about. And it's so boring and cliched. It's so cliched, right? So is the bottom line of all of this the educational system?
Yes. I mean, you know, and I say this because I know I'm a product of an educational system that wants to strip me further away from my identity. That's what it's doing. And thank God I was able to understand that. And I'm still in the process of unlearning. You know, Steve Biko speaks about a whiteness mindset and a blackness mindset. I've been educated to have a whiteness mindset, to think that I'm inferior, to think that our stories aren't as valuable as theirs, as white people's. And you know how long that takes to undo, especially when you were raised in it, your teachers silenced you to say otherwise. I'm currently fighting for my sisters in South Africa right now in the school that I went to that educated me, because they were being silenced for sharing their experience as Black girls, Black boys in a predominantly white school in 2020. That experience doesn't have a voice. Why not? What does it do to you for that story to come out? Can we ask ourselves that? Why are you offended to hear how it's unnatural for me to experience these things every single day, to not be free, fully free, to be who I am, to build my identity. That's why we go to school. We go to school to learn, to grow, to know ourselves better. But if I feel that I'm not growing in every aspect of my education, if I feel that I'm not fully free, why can I not tell you as a teacher? Especially when you believe you're there to help me grow.
So when you have a minute offline, you must ask Jean a classic story of mine from Parsons. We've been through it before here, so I'm not going to bore these guys, but exactly this that you've said was a space I was in 1992 at Parsons. You must ask her about this.
I
So
will.
the interesting thing in that context is we choose to go to a place that we believe will give us that identity, will give us that freedom of thought, will give us the opportunity to critically think, to give us the skill set to ask those questions that our systems have never allowed us to. Malia, even today in the education system in Karachi, in Pakistan, this is where this program that we're now chatting in started like this 8 years ago, because I realized that our students are not asking the questions. And they're not asking the questions because they don't know how to. It's
We're
a skill
young.
set, right? Sorry?
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just on to comment on that, is we're 12 years old, we're 16 years old, we're 5 years old. How are we going to ask those questions, especially when the system has already drafted our brains into conforming to the system? I'm so proud of those girls for bringing that up, because when I was my sister's age, I had no idea until it was too late. Until I found myself lost, completely lost, doing things outside of my ancestral values and principles. And Jean just said you should tell the story. You know, she's always encouraging
I know.
us to to tell stories because they're powerful. So I think you should, you know, and as you tell the story, I'm gonna just read people's comments and see if we can engage with the audience before we continue.
So, I mean, actually, I have to thank our audience because I've been watching, while I've been listening to you, I've been watching some absolutely incredible, really powerful and poignant comments and questions coming through. Um, it's interesting. For instance, I will tell the story, but I'm just going to quickly pick up on a couple of these that have caught my eye. Sana Khan Niazi lives in Karachi. She's a friend of mine. Phenomenal woman, does stand-up comedian, is a stand-up comedian. So imagine, as a woman in Pakistan, single woman in Pakistan, standing up on stage, being a comedian. It's really difficult work. She says our primary education has been designed to keep certain parts of history out of it. You said 5-year-olds, 10-year, 12-year-olds, to shape minds a certain way. Again, exactly what you just said. Like in Pakistan's history books, big chunks of historical events of this region are missing. So the thing is that we have, you and I, Malia, specifically you, me, Jean, and there are others like us who are saying stop, just stop. This is a 8-horse carriage that's running crazy. And before we can turn it around and retrain the horses, can we just stop the madness? Breathe. Allow nature in to re-guide us, to recalibrate this completely AWOL calibration of what the entire world thinks is normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's now time to recalibrate that normal and recalibrate utopia, redefine dystopia, redefine governance, and for sure, redefine education, learning, contribution, participation, and history being documented. Documentation. Marvi was talking about documentation earlier, that we are choosing to not document. or we're documenting and then burning it. So when I said intellectual genocide, that's probably the nicest way I can say it. Because like you said, the youngsters, it's like Pavlovian. So they're being trained to not think year after year after year after year. So that when they come to a point when they should be able to select that institution, higher institution somewhere in the world that promises to give them the answers or the ability, the space to ask those questions without being judged on color, gender, economic background, etc. That 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old is lost, is afraid, because they have been badgered. They've been beaten down into believing that they're not worth anything, that they're worthless. You put them out of their homes, the fear just takes over. They jam. They can't move. They don't know how to find the places. And I know Gina said tell her story, but you know, my story is, okay, so I had a project, and I'll keep this really short because I think your stories today are more interesting. But it responds to your question about can we ask when we go to the right place. So I arrive at one of the world's most prestigious universities. I'm on scholarship. I've got to manage the dean's list, that whatever, 3.6, 3.8 standard. And I'm there because I want to learn. I want to find my own voice. I want to find my own potential. Through my high school, I've been told, this is what you should do, what you can do, here's your potential, go develop, go nurture it. So I arrive in this place. I specifically pick a program that gives me a broad general thing. I'm not pigeonholed into something that's going to suffocate me. I want to spread my wings. I want to think about all the things that I've not had a chance to. And I know they're like buzzing around, bothering me inside. So I get to this place and I think, wow, this is my opportunity. I can ask the questions, I can do as I please. And there were, very quickly you realize that there were professors who would allow you to ask, who would nurture you. But the general system framework said no. So the person at the top would inevitably object. And I haven't thought about this very often because gender bias doesn't play a role in my thought process. You and I are equal, and it's humanity and nature that binds us, and the earth. We're both sitting on the same earth. If I take a thread and tie it to my toe, I could take it out and eventually tie it to your toes. It's not like you're sitting on a different planet. We are connected right now, right here, physically connected. So I asked these questions and I suddenly realized that the top lot said, wait a second, you should not be asking these questions. And I did a project that the site for which was set in the men's and women's bathrooms. So the men's and women's bathrooms shared one wall with all the plumbing, and then one side of the butterfly was the men's and the other side of the butterfly was the women's. So I had set up my models and I'd made a little hole in the sheetrock wall behind the mirror on both sides, over the sink. So if you and I are washing our hands, we can see each other. So I become your reflection and you become my reflection. And we become one. This was offensive and considered sexual harassment in the world's top university for this kind of work. I had taken permission from everybody that I will do this just before my jury. It'll be 1 hour, 2 hours. I will put it all back and it'll be gone. Next to the sinks were two of these walls that you can unbolt from the wall. So they're not walls, they're just partitions. One side was a partition next to a WC, which was not working on the women's side. It wasn't working in any case. So it's not like somebody could have used it. On the men's side, it was the partition between the sink and the urinal. So I took them out. I thought, here's my urinal, that's my gender. And on your side, there's your gender. So suddenly our genders and our personal energies were connected in this square. And I thought we should talk about it. Why can't we discuss this? Let's talk about these issues that this raises, and architecture and separation, privacy. What is it that you and I need to be private about? I don't really understand. Like, you don't have any special bits that I don't know about, and vice versa. We were born alone. We will go back into the earth alone. We will both be eaten by the same ants. We will both become mulch, and we will disappear.
Mm.
So what is it that we need to be so secretive about?
Mm.
What do you have, Malia, that's so special that we can't share?
What do
Why
I have that's so special?
we can't share? That we can't share? I
And I
want to
love
share.
that question. I love that question because you're seeing my value and my worth and the special in me.
Yeah,
And that
and we want to
special,
share that, right?
yes, we want to share it. But that special is a threat to some for unknown reasons. And that's why, yeah.
So
I
that's
mean,
what happened. That's the
mhm.
story. So this happened, and there was mayhem, and this. I put it all back. We had the jury, we had the discussion, everything was put back, and the case was closed, as I promised.
Mm-hmm.
And for that jury, we had students who had come down from fashion, from sculpture, from everywhere, because it wasn't the most brilliant of projects. I mean, I was just a junior, but everybody wanted to be a piece of this opportunity to ask a question and not be crushed, or to stand by your conviction. I was convinced that there
Mm-hmm.
was nothing wrong with what I was doing, and there genuinely wasn't. I wasn't taking away anybody's food. I wasn't taking away anybody's lives. I wasn't touching anybody inappropriately. I wasn't using foul language. I couldn't understand what was the problem. And so they came down to witness the discussion that would happen. So this is the story about what happens to our ability to ask questions, and why is it constantly being crushed?
And you know what's interesting about the educational system, because it's an important part, is to also for a moment think about the silencing of people of color. What is that? So what is the educational system raising on the flip side of that? What kind of future white minds are you fostering? I wonder if teachers ask themselves that. If you're not fostering equality, justice, if you're not on the right side of a better future, what are you doing? Are you aware of your responsibility and where? Because if in that year, if in my year of studying in a predominantly white high school in South Africa, which was a big culture shock for me because I came from the Congo, where I was the majority. And if also studying in the Congo, where I'm the majority, but still in the same system. I loved you began the conversation. You said it's the same paintbrush.
Yeah.
So what are we, if children are the future? What is the future looking like in the hands of teachers right now? And that's a question that they have to ask themselves for a better future, because that system, and that's a question that I want to ask you, are we abolishing the system? Should we like, is there hope that with what there is we can really construct, map, architect something that looks inclusive? Or is it drawing it all over again? Because you mentioned the documentation again. Just because my grandparents, my ancestors, history, principles, values, resilience, daily love for each other wasn't written by the white man, doesn't make it invalid.
Yep.
It's in me. It's in us. I feel it when I can't sleep because someone has been killed with a knee to his neck. That's my ancestors screaming in me. It's unrest. And something else I told my South African friend Lesedi, I said they may not be killing us with their knees to our necks, us, me, but they've killed us mentally and emotionally. And the work it takes to undo that, to unlearn that, is a protest every single day. Every day. It's not for 100 years. It's not just that. It's beyond that. Let's look at it closer, because I think that's the difference with the George Floyd video. It's not a gun by a distance. Let's bring it close. Let's bring it really close. It's me every day. Reminding myself that I am beautiful, reminding myself that I am worthy, reminding myself that I don't have to prove myself to see my value every single day, every day. Waking up, being mindful, waking up, being intentional about everything. Why? Because you miss one heartbeat, you miss one little fiber of synchronization, everything is diverted. Why? Because you are doing it against all odds, against all odds. You know, I'm here in New York now. For some reason, just because I'm here, people listen. No, but I have to. But I'm the same person. I had this voice when I was in South Africa. I had this voice when I was in Congo. So don't listen now just because she's in New York. Listen to my brothers in Congo. Listen to my brothers in South Africa. Listen to my sisters in South Africa. Listen to my sisters in Congo. If you're hearing me now, imagine what you're missing to hear. Not in me. I am who I was. I've grown, sure. And traveling, the experience of traveling has given me a broader perspective. I get that. But there are voices dying to be heard. I see my sisters hurt, screaming. And all that they're getting is, she's just an angry Black woman. Then let us see that anger and try to understand what it would take to be that angry. No one wakes up with the desire to be an angry person.
Yeah.
Look outside of yourself for one moment, you know? So
Interesting enough, the angry Black woman who is just tossed aside also exists here and exists in this entire region, because for some reason we have all been made to believe systemically that dark skin is not good. So we have in the southern southwestern end of Pakistan, we have folks that are dark skinned. They've come across from Africa as boatsmen many years ago, way more than 400 years ago, thousands of years ago, and they've been here forever. So when I say 400 years is young, for me, I'm sitting in a country that has 5,000 years history. So that's my context. And these people are treated the same way as what you're describing. They are given the worst of the jobs. They're not taken seriously. It's okay if they're maltreated or they're abused. They don't come into the press. Nobody talks about it. Nobody speaks for them. Across this region, there are cosmetics that promise to make you fair and lovely and clear and light-skinned, because if you're light-skinned, as a woman, you will have more chances of getting married and finding the right kind of husband. And now they have the same bleaching, I don't know what it is, bleaching creams for men, because, you know, the women, thank God, are saying, I don't want a Black man, in their terms, right? They say, if we have to be bleaching our faces, why can't he bleach his face as well? Why is anybody bleaching their faces? So, and it's a systemic degradation that has gone across the board.
yeah.
You look at our brides. The brides are painted on like geishas. The geisha is a pale-skinned woman to begin with. The Japanese, the Chinese, the Orientals are pale-skinned to begin with, naturally. So for them to go lighter, it's not objectionable. But for us to get, like, drag queens go white, drag is an art. But here, you look at the bridal pictures. If you Google brides in Pakistan, before and after, you won't believe it's the same woman. There's a huge joke that says the next morning the man divorces his wife because he says, this is not the woman I married the night before. So this whiteness, this white supremacist attitude is a global cancer.
Yes.
It's across the board. And then when people like me want to go and spend time in the sun because I want the vitamin D, I want to feel color, I want my melatonin to respond and function and work like it's meant to. Malia, I can't tell you how many people say, oh my God, what's happened to your skin? You've gone black. Like, I chose to go black. I've just spent 4 hours, 3 days in a row, lying naked in the sun. I feel beautiful. This is fantastic. And they scoff at me and they roll their eyes. So this white supremacist issue may have started in 1492 in the US or roundabout. They need to, and again I say I need all the colonialists who put down the indigenous species before they started trading humans, before they started their human trafficking, before they started importing the idea of slavery. There was a genocide that all of these people need to respond to in all of these countries that they went into where there were indigenous species, indigenous people. And the issue, again, I think is, before we get to equality, is the humanity. Ask them, if you couldn't see color, if you're a person who is potentially going to oppress you because they're white and you're black, if they couldn't see the color, what would they do?
Wow. I hope I get to see that in my lifetime. I hope the majority of humans ask themselves that, spend some time inside themselves to break those systemic oppressive ideologies and ask that. It's simple. I don't know, but we're fighting, and there's a post that I've been telling people a lot, and it's a post that I will share with you as soon as we get off. I wish I remember the name to credit it, but I wonder if Robin can go look for me. Basically it says, Robin is a friend who's here. Hi, Robsy.
Yeah.
But it's a post that said, racism is like COVID, assume you have it. For me, that's just saying it's a system that even in our communities of color, they have brushed that paintbrush so well that we're practicing those oppressive ideas without even realizing it.
Amongst ourselves.
Yes, amongst ourselves. And that's another conversation we need to have.
Yeah.
Because yesterday, for the first time, I realized Black people are tired and exhausted. And Black women, I think Black women are finished. Because Black women carry the pain of their offsprings. Black women carry the pain of their men. We're always at the front line for our men. Are they at the front line for us? And you realize how many, it's in us. We are nurturing beings. If women in general, if we recognize that fiber in women, if we can agree on that, that means white women have it. That means Black women have it. Now with the Black people's suffering again and again, imagine how many times Black women have had to do this. To what extent it affects our architecture, to what extent it breaks us, but we have to just stand up again with no luxury to therapy. We just have to show up. I lost my grandmother on March 28th, and at 16 she was an orphan who took care of 3 siblings, and then she raised 4 children alone when her man left her for another family. So that she raised 7 children, 7 minds. This is my grandmother. Bear in mind, that's all the lineage I'm aware of. Beyond her, I don't know. And that went with her. But I have to see through that it didn't go, because as we are raised in our African communities, is someone else's father is your father. Someone else's grandma is your grandma. We're one. So I've had to work on believing that I will find those stories in other grandmothers because we're one. But what I'm saying is, when you hear her story as a Black woman, and even just in the system, and I don't know if you agree with me, Black women are at the bottom of the ladder. Black women are tired. But yet they still rise and are at the front line of this fight. Ava's film, When They See Us, she's at the front line of making educational films to educate us all, white and Black, films we should all be seeing. Because when they see us, what do they see? We need to know that so that we can work against that. Because when they see us, do they see life as the mapping been life? If we can just be killed with a neck, if we can get shot, let's take it back to the far side. I don't know.
I think we need to have all of these conversations live, public, unabashedly, unapologetically honest, and have it be part of a quest to rediscover and reclaim our lineage, our shared lineage. My shared lineage that goes back to your roots, and your lineage that goes back to mine, and we bring in Jeans, and we bring in Robins, and we bring in Sanas and Umars. We bring in all these lineages. And I think that creating this erudite library of resources, facts, tangible history that's been kept from us, would be a great new place to begin. Whether, like you said, whether this happens in our lifetime or not, at least if we can re-navigate and realign this way and away from where we've been going, at least we get that ball moving. We have the documentation, we have the youngsters coming in, we include, all of our education system also separates the ages. Why can I not sit in a classroom with a 14-year-old and a 55-year-old or 64? And we separate the subjects. The subjects are all interlinked. You cannot take history away from science and social sciences away from mathematics and geometry. So I think this is a great conversation that we're going to have to wrap up, because unfortunately our time is up, Malia. But I think that we must continue this conversation and build on it. This is a phenomenal start. Bless you for giving me the time, for the energy, for the passion, for the love, and for the humanity. So I owe you so much for this hour. I mean, God bless you.
You too. You too.
And thank you so much, everybody else who was here today.
Yes,
we will sign
thank you.
And we will reconnect soon. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Till we connect again.
Bye-bye.